SuperCut! Buckle up, dudes. This is a ride. This is Death Note. Death Note is famous for those people for which it is famous. It's an anime from manga, and when I first saw it in 2009-ish, it's from 2006. They said, "Oh, you like Hikaru no Go, so you're going to love Death Note." And the Peanut Gallery is already rolling her eyes to heaven because you know what? That is the shittiest recommendation ever. Really, Hikaru no Go is very mundane, sweet, a little bit naive, always nice,
thoughtful, toggles along.
Thoughtful, toggles along indeed, and Death Note is absolutely nothing of the kind. It is a roller coaster ride that ends in a very, very sudden stop. Oh my god. Really. However, I did rewatch it recently, like this year, because it is in a way a new story, a modern story that we hadn't heard before. This is why it became so famous in 2006 when it came out on Japanese television, and I think it almost immediately went to American television. So there's an American dub and there's a Japanese original. I watched the Japanese original because, duh. So my take on this is the way I watched it in 2009-ish, as somebody who had cursory knowledge of animes and stuff like that. I mean, I'm a Westerner watching a Japanese thing. So the story is a young man, 17. He does 4 things in life: eats, sleeps, studies for exams, takes exams. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's his life. Until one day he sees in the grass a notebook that's been dropped by somebody. He doesn't have time for that, so he just picks it up and sticks it in his bag and figure out whatever later. When later comes, he's at home, opens it up, it says, whose ever name you write in this book shall die after 40 seconds. He sort of goes, okay, college prank. He throws it in the corner, and that's it. The only other thing that is interesting about this chap, his name is Light. Light Yagami. His father is a police commissioner. I think you'd probably call the commissioner in English. One step higher than detective, basically. So he's from a police family. He has the police TV on. They have TV. In Japan, they have enough channels that you can have a channel that does dedicated police stuff. That I don't know, because I don't live in Japan. I don't know this, but that's what it appears to be. He has it on as background noise, and at some point there is a live broadcast of a kidnapping. A convicted murderer has escaped, has taken hostage a kindergarten with kids in it and teachers. And Light stops and remembers, oh, I have this stupid notebook. I'm sure it's a prank, but I'm going to try and just write this guy's name. Because the guy is named with a picture, full name, which is, of course, in Japanese, is a whole bunch of kanji, Japanese characters, which I did know at the time, and they do make it clear in the anime, you have to write these things correctly or it's wrong. Like, way wrong. So, he writes down the guy's name, waits 40 seconds, and nothing happens. So he sort of goes, okay, whatever. And then on the television, because it's a live feed, and they didn't actually have eyes on the guy, it was just the outside of the building, and then people are coming out and said, well, the guy just keeled over. Just like that. He grabbed his heart and keeled over. The light goes, oh my God, it worked. And he has a nervous breakdown, a fast nervous breakdown in 50 seconds. And then anime makes a mistake. It makes a kind of fold in the story where I sort of go, why? And I'm going to explain why before I tell you what the fold is, because it's weird. These animes are often made from a manga, which is, of course, a little book thingy here, manga. Comic strip thingy.
Yeah. A
graphic novel. But that is how we get it. If we get it in this way, because I got the anime first, and then you have the people who read manga, they get the manga first. That is not how this story was started. It was started in a magazine that only published like the first X pages, maybe 10 pages, like the first chapter. So I think there's like 4 or 5, maybe 6 chapters in one of these booklets. So this magazine is meant for 11 to 18-year-olds, and it's full of flashy anime that has monster this and battle that and I don't know what. And this story starts really, there's not much to see here. And the only thing that is to see is actually a little later on. So they folded up the story to show the little later on bits. The monster. There is a monster. So that the magazine actually has something to show, because there's not much to see here. So that is actually pretty much like Hikaru no Go. There's not much to see there. There's just normal guy, weird situation. That's it. So I'm going to tell you the story the way it should have been done. Light realizes that, oh my God, this thing works. And then he starts to look at the inside of the Death Notes, because it's not the only rule that's written there. There's more rules, and he starts to read them. And one of the rules is you have to spell the name correctly. You not only have to spell the name correctly, which, like I said, with kanji, that's complicated. It's more complicated than English spelling would be. But you also have to visualize the person involved, so you don't so you don't kill the person with the similar name. I mean, you have to name correctly, but if the name is John Jones, you don't want to kill every John Jones. So you have to actually also picture the person. And that's why that is so interesting on the television in Japan. They show not when the report of the hostage taker in the kindergarten came on, it showed a picture of the guy with his full name. And I live in the Netherlands. They'd never do that. They'd not even, they'd never show a picture.
Never a picture, and only first name and the first letter of the last name.
Exactly. So that is okay. But it turns out that in Japan, they don't not only show all these things, there are actually lists that are published of criminals. Criminals that are convicted of crimes, apparently there are lists of these things, and they are just published. I don't know how that works. Wouldn't be happening here. So that makes it very particular for a Japanese story to do it in a Japanese way. Light, once he gets over his shock, so Light wants to figure out how this works, and when he is just going to the supermarket to get some stuff for the house, he sees a motorcycle guy with a couple of motorcycle friends harassing a lady. It's evening, harassing a lady pretty strongly. Basically, they're undressing her in the middle of the street. They're trying to pull her clothes off, and the guy shouts his own name because he's the great whatever it was. And Light starts to write down his name and try to get the right spelling, and then give it 40 seconds, and And the guy dies. And I agree with Light that this was not a nice guy. And I agree that what the guy was doing was something they should have been going to jail for. Should he have died for it? Maybe not so much. I do realize that Light has one weapon in his hand and it kills. It's the only thing it does. But did this guy deserve to die? And when I was watching this, I was going, you know what? This is a morality tale. This is what this thing is about. It's when is it right to kill? When is it not right to kill? So I was thinking, okay, I understand this. This is a morality tale. Okay, let's go on. Light, it works, and Light starts. Meanwhile, back in hell, I suppose it's hell, there's the monster. There's a scene of the monsters talking. One of the monsters has dropped his death note in the world because it seemed like fun. And now he sort of has to go and actually, sort of take a look at the fun and maybe retrieve the death note, or the Hell King is going to be angry, that sort of thing. So just go, okay, let's go do that. It's about when he arrives on Earth to go take a look at the hell at what happened to his book. It's 5 days later, and he arrives at Light's house, and then this is interesting. This monster, I'll show you a picture. It just arrives at Light's house, in his room, and all Light does is look up and say, I was waiting for you. Are you here to come and take me off to hell? And says, and the monster is called Ryuk. His moniker is Shinigami. And for people who watch anime a lot, they use Shinigami for a lot of different death-related monsters or people in charge of dying and death. Because Shine means death and dying, and Gami is Kami is of course God, and if you connect it, it's Gami, of course. So it means literally death god, but it's not what that actually does in the story. And in any of these stories, when they use Shinigami, what they mean is somebody who's in charge of people who are dead or dying or are transported. So what he is a reaper. He is a death reaper. And to me, to my Western eyes, he looks like a demon. He has all the hallmarks that a demon should have. Not a devil. A devil actually tempts you to do things. A demon usually is there when bad things happen. That's what Ryuk is, a demon. So he's a reaper demon. And Light is not surprised to see him, and he asks, "Are you going to reap me?" And Ryuk says, "No. I'm just here to observe the fun. I've given you this death note. You should go and use it." And then Light says, "Well, I have. In the last 5 days, since that second murder, he has been systematically killing all the convicted criminals of Japan and the Greater Tokyo area in particular. Anybody who's been convicted of a major crime, he's been killing them."
Oops.
And all this happens in the first 2 episodes. The entire anime is basically in the first 2 episodes. If you want to watch the first 2 episodes, you know it all. all the rest, all the other 35 episodes, is just watching this
train wreck.
This train wreck hit the wall, like spectacularly. It is brilliant because I've actually divvied up the story in 5 pieces. Each piece is brilliant to watch. It's like, because Light is, he is brilliant. But the detective they put against him also is brilliant. And you get this fight to the death. And you realize it's to the death at some point because neither of them are going to let up. They can't. The Light won't, and the detective can't. So, for a genre, this is more. It is a sort of a cross between a horror story and a detective story. It has all the intricacies. All the must fit together of a detective story. That's why there's actually a mistake in the original manga. That the manga came out 2003, the anime 2006, so quite soon after. They realized in a mistake. They fixed it because it needs to fit that closely together, and it's very difficult to do, especially on the go, because the manga was written on the go, and then you can't go back because it's already been published. As the story goes along, Light keeps saying, "Oh, I want to rid the world of evil and make the place more livable." In some adjacent research, I found that on the whole, Japanese people believe they have a criminality problem. So I think that's why he's fixating on that. That's why he thinks it's a good thing to just exterminate all criminals. Systematically. Ooh, it's very uncomfortable to watch. And when the detective shows up, the way this thing is written is like a roller coaster ride, and everything fits together in such a beautiful way that I don't want to tell you the story. You just go and watch it. But when the detective shows up onto the scene. He is actually the complete antithesis of Light. Light is a young man. He's in animes the Japanese, even though he's a Japanese character, he's blonde and has light eyes and light skin and all that. I'm a little bit uncomfortable. But this is 2006. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the way the Japanese sometimes portray themselves and then say, "Oh, this is a Japanese person." He is young, he is very handsome, he actually has a young lady who wants him. He doesn't want her, but the detective, roughly, the only two things that the detective and Light have in common is they're Japanese and they're young and male. So 3 things. He is, stoops over, he has black hair going every which way. He's
the detective.
The detective. He's like a human version of a goblin, basically. So he looks. I don't know if he looks repulsive, but I don't think he looks. He's not supposed to look attractive, at least. Socially awkward. Walks around without socks on when everybody should be wearing socks. He holds things like this instead of like a normal person. He's weird, but he is fully as brilliant as Light is, smart as Button. The best detective in the world is who they call in, because they figure out somebody is killing these people, and we don't understand why. So they get Interpol in, and they get this detective in, his name is L. And that's annoying because light on one hand and L on the other.
So yin and yang.
Yeah, but why give them practically the same name? I don't understand
because
that.
It's yin and yang.
Yeah, maybe. Also, L and light are completely unpronounceable for...
They always get
Yeah,
with L's in them.
just like the way that light looks with the hair too light, the skin too light. They're trying to make something that doesn't exist, and it actually makes me uncomfortable to watch that part of it. Apart from the fact that this whole thing makes me uncomfortable. Because
all the killing and stuff.
All the killing and stuff, because one thing you realize, yes, we're looking at light, we're following light. He's the bad guy. This guy is a psychopath. He takes to murdering like a duck takes to water. He's not surprised when their demon shows up, and he's willing to murder. And this guy, this motorcycle guy that he kills, his second murder, who was an unpleasant character and may not deserve to die, but okay, if you really think that's going to help the world. But no, the almost after his first set of murders, he goes straight on to killing FBI agents because they're on his tail. That's the only reason he kills them, is because they're after him. And I was watching this, and especially the first one. He does one and then he does a set. I'm going, any justification that you had for exterminating bad guys, yes, I know, the weapon you have can only kill. It's the only thing it can do. It can kill. It can't just say, okay, now we're incarcerate you for forever, or we send you to a different realm, or anything like that. All it can do is kill. So that's the only weapon you have. And I understand that you're willing to, if you're willing to use it. I wouldn't be, but that's my moral point. I would not be doing that. But if you're willing to do that, then you should, and you have a justification, then stick to your justification. The FBI, there was an FBI guy following him, and that made him uncomfortable, and so he retaliated. But if you think about it, what can the FBI do to him? All he has done is write down a name in a notebook. That there is a supernatural power attached to that, the justice system is not going to care. So they cannot prove anything other than you wrote down a name in a book. And that's actually the problem that L has. L, the detective, has the problem that he's fighting a force that does not exist in his world. He's trying to find the person who keeps killing the people by letting them have a heart attack. How is he doing? How is this bad guy doing this in a actual world? Because it's impossible. L has to actually try and figure out an impossibility, and it frustrates him greatly. Until the actual first time when the name Shinigami, with the idea Shinigami comes up, he actually falls off his chair, literally falls off his chair in shock that the supernatural is into this, and he doesn't believe it. He categorically refuses it until the Shinigami is actually standing in front of his face. Because, duh! And the struggle between L and light is absolutely worth the price of admission. Absolutely. What's one of the bad things about this show is the way they treat women. There's the female character, Misa. I'm going to just call her Misa because Misa is going to annoy me real. It annoyed me in the show as well. So Misa also gets a death note, different death notes. There is a backstory there. They messed that up because they skipped the backstory and then later don't fill it in. there is a reason for she has the Death Note. It does exactly the same as Light's Death Note. These Death Note do have more rules, and the more rules come, there's more options you can do. You can, instead of just letting somebody die of a heart attack in 40 seconds, you can actually make them do stuff within reason and make them die of something else. Within reason, with limits, with time limits and physical limits, and also human limits. The interesting limit that they put on human, so it should be in the human's ability, should be in physical ability. So you can't say, oh, you when the person is in Tokyo, they will. You say they will within the hour they will jump off the Eiffel Tower. In Paris is impossible, so then the person just dies of a heart attack and doesn't do that. You can make people do what they would naturally do. So you can tell them first they're going to go to the supermarket and buy everything with all their savings, and then they're going to jump off a bridge. You could let them do that because they do have savings and they can do that. The one thing that I had a problem with is in the rules that it specifically states is that suicide is always a human condition and is always doable. That's a different thing because there's in Japanese terms I'm sure, yes, but European terms maybe not so much. So you have more options. So when Misa gets the Death Note, every female character in this thing is their existence only is related to a male character. To the point that Misa's only thing in life is to find the Kira. Kira is the name of the phenomenon of all these criminals dying suddenly. Kira did it, and Kira, of course, is killer, but then Japaneseified, so Kira. She wants to find Kira because Kira killed the murderer of her entire family. Her family was murdered by an ex-murderer, and this guy nearly got off from being prosecuted, and Kira just killed him in the Kira way. And so she wants to find Kira, so she uses the Death Note to have a news announcer have a news announcer play a tape of supposed Kira, where this Kira tries to contact Kira. And the only way you can do something with the Death Note is by having them die at the end. So she kills a news announcer for no reason. She does find him, and what does she want from him? Oh, you're a nice young man. I want to hug you and kiss you and... Light, she's so out of luck. Light, you see, is a psychopath, an actual psychopath, and he's willing to use her for whatever means he wants. When he use her up, as well. He's a psychopath. That's why it makes it so uncomfortable to watch. It's interesting to watch, but it's uncomfortable because he's a straight up psychopath. And psychopaths have their own idea of how the world should be. He actually says it. Light imagines himself to be a god, because with the Death Note he is a god. Really, an actual god in the Western sense of godhood. He's there to rid the world of the evil of the criminal, and he's the one to do it. And if he can use Misa and her Death Note, because then he will. He actually, the only way he can accept Misa is because the first thing she does is just give him the Death Note, her Death Note, for safekeeping, because it is possible for one Death Note owner to write the name of another Death Note owner, and then that person will die. So he is sort of going, when she shows up, he sort of goes, and then she says, "Take it, please."
Yeah.
And then he takes it, and then she has no power. I mean, basically the only way he can accept her is by giving him all the power, because he's a psychopath.
Mm.
She's not even the only female character that this happens to. It's really... Okay. What makes this thing... Why you keep looking and not looking away is you try...
It's a train wreck!
It's a train wreck. And you actually... Because
it's too fascinating to look away.
Exactly. And I was waiting for that quintessential morality tale moment where he realizes he made a mistake, or you as the viewer realizes he's gone off the deep end. And the thing is, it doesn't happen. That it just, the whole thing, it runs, and it runs like it runs in two pieces. There's a sort of a season 1 in the first 24 episodes, and then the next, there's another 13 left, and that's what the second part of the story is. There is an actual break there in the original story. So it runs out. There is only one way this can end. It's a fight to the death, and I'm going to put some spoilers in here because I have no choice. I'm sorry. Elle loses the first battle. However, Light continues. Light actually sluices himself into the investigation, which is a completely modern criminal thing to do, is get the criminal comes into the investigation because duh. And that's the best way to get information. So he sluices himself into the investigation. But the one thing that a criminal of Light, of a psychopath of Light's quality maybe doesn't realize is that where there is one L and they die, another will come. So an M comes and an N comes, and it will never end. And it must end at some point, and it ends with Light losing at the end. He loses at the end because it cannot end any other way. This is
They keep coming forever.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time.
Also, the nature of the Death Note is that whenever he does there are a couple of functions he can add to the Death Note that actually can cost him part of himself. One of the first things, and this is like in the very first episode when Ryuk first shows up, they talk about the nature of the Death Note and of, I think it's like the second thing he says when Light asks, "Are you here to come and reap me?" And he says, and then Ryuk says, "No, I'll wait until you're ready." The user of a Death Note will go to neither heaven nor hell. Is pretty much what he says. And I think at the end, that's how it actually ends, because it doesn't end in a funeral or in an afterlife. It ends with a corpse on the floor. A very pretty, light-shaped corpse on the floor. They do a lovely shot of it, of course, with the end credits running all over it of the last episode. It's beautiful. Because it cannot end any other way. It cannot end any other way. But I'm still missing, where's my morality moments? I mean, right at the end, when he realizes he's lost, he goes to pieces. But that doesn't feel like a morality moment. Like okay, this is clear what this story is trying to tell. And I was going back in my mind, when is it? Is it when he manages to kill Elle in a backstabbing way after befriending Elle? Is it earlier when he kills 15 FBI agents, or earlier when he kills the guy who's the motorcycle guy who is just undressing a girl in an inappropriate way? Or is it the very first one? Or when is it? for a Western viewer, I don't think it's not in there. It's not in there. But for an Eastern viewer, and this is where my later knowledge comes in a Zen Buddhist way, is when, because they talk about the way and the way of your life. When does he get off the way? And I'm trying to find that here. When does he get off the way? Does he get off the way with the very first murder, or when he picks up the Death Note, or even when Ryuk drops the Death Note, which is completely unrelated to light? And I'm seeing the peanut gallery nod.
Well, yeah, I had already written down is he was screwed from the moment that he picked up the book.
Yeah.
His life was over.
Yeah, and that is, I think, the Oriental take on it, the Zen Buddhist take on it, this is a Zen Buddhist morality tale, is that he was screwed before he picked up the Death Note.
And the problem with being screwed and still being alive, if you believe in that life is circular and you get to go many go-arounds and you achieve enlightenment if you go the right direction, you go towards enlightenment. If you're off the way during your lifetime, then there's no point to your life, because you can't get back on the way because it's already over. Yeah. You might as well just pack it in, kill yourself, and whatever.
And this is the reason.
He did not do that.
This is the reason why I think he was not surprised when Ryuk showed up, and he wasn't very worried when he asked Ryuk, "Are you going to read me right now?" He wasn't surprised, he wasn't worried, because he knew his life was over. And basically, he decided he was going to go out with a bang instead of a whimper. And then Ryuk tells him, and this is after he's not surprised, tells him, will go neither heaven nor hell, meaning you will not be reincarnating, you will not have a second go. This is it. And then he goes off it in a big way. He was already killing non-stop, but now he has no reason not to do.
He lost his humanity the moment he realized what the book was.
Yeah, but the unfair thing is that he doesn't really realize it until he's already used it, because he thinks it's a prank. Which is what in the Western. If you look at this as a Western story, he is unfairly screwed. This feels very unfair to me, because he does not know what the rules are, and he's already been committed to the events before he knows what the rules actually are. I would still say that if I personally would given a Death Note and it says you write a name and in 40 seconds somebody will die, I'd probably not use it, because I don't want to even be anywhere near that kind of thing.
And he didn't have a problem with it.
Well, he
thought it was funny.
He thought it was a prank, and then he had a reason to use it because of the hostage situation, which was a real situation that was really dangerous for the people involved. He did something with that first murder. He did something good. As far as would that be comparable to a police officer trying to stop this guy and shooting him to death? Exactly. To do so, it's not ideal, but it's better than the alternative. Yeah. And but he didn't know what the consequences were, which is, to a Western eye, that's unfair. As such, oh my God, this is a great story. And there's a lot to talk about this story. You had something written down?
Yes. So my earlier question was, is light actually death? Because you do say he's not going to heaven, he's not going to hell. So the moment that he either started using the Death Note or he picked up the Death Note, whatever the moment was that his destiny changed, or his situation in the universe changed, from you're now no longer going to be a person that is going to reach enlightenment and go through many incarnations. You don't get any more shot. This is it for you. So is he actually a form of death?
The anime presents you with a very pretty corpse at the end. That is all the statement it makes. Mm-hmm. It makes no moral judgment at all. It presents the detective as repulsive, the normal people as very mundane and boring, and Light as the handsomest guy around.
Glamorous.
And Misa is also the other Death Note holder, is also glamorous. She actually has a career as an actress. Mm-hmm. So it's, in a way, it doesn't quite know what it needs to feel about that, because it's glamorizing all the bad people and goblinizing anybody who's actually fighting against death. The first FBI agent, and that's when, this is the point where I said you lied, you were an asshole. The first FBI agent he kills, he manipulates the guy into blah. He had a fiancée, and the fiancée who was even smarter than the FBI agent, because she was FBI, but she was going to get married and stop being FBI. They were both getting married. The fiancée shows up and starts sniffing around, and he makes her commit suicide. In a somebody who was not on the path of suicide at all. Yes, her fiancé was dead, but she was intent on killing, and that's why I was really upset with the suicide rule, because suicide is always an option. No, I don't think this girl would have committed suicide. He made her sad enough to commit suicide. That's a horrible thing to do. And
he completely and utterly lost his humanity. And the question is, did he have it in the first place? Because we don't know that he had any sort of character, because his life consisted, you started with, of eating, sleeping, studying for tests and taking tests. So he had no personality whatsoever.
We never get to see Light before he has the Death Note. We never get to see Misa before she has the Death Note. So
we don't know if these people actually had personalities. If they actually were people, could it be they were?
The only indication that we have is that Light's father, who does play a big part, and he's actually an interesting part of the story. We see the personality of Light's father. And I say that Light is a psychopath. I also say his father is a psychopath. The difference between Light and his father is 30 years experience and the absence of a Death Note. And that is why the dad is a police commissioner fighting crime in that way, and
there your yin and your yang is back, right? Because L was also police. And he is smart. They're both smart. And he's the other side. It's like, what can you do with your power? Do you actually serve the greater good? Serve society? And that way you are the judge and not jury, but you are the judge. Or do you just go completely rogue and are judge, jury, and executioner without any concern for human law, for social norms, for anything that's going on, and also for relative to the crime, because one crime, okay, so you had a kidnapper, and he could have, in the heat of the moment, he could have been killed by police officers, but these other crimes, not every crime needs to end in the criminal being dead. So the whole judge, jury, and executioner part of it was really.
Yeah, and the nature of the Death Note and the nature of Death Note possession, if you possess it, there's a subplot of where you can the Reaper that is associated with the Death Note, which is, there are some issues with some slight plot issues there, but it's fine. You can show a Reaper to a person by having them touch the Death Note. They don't own the Death Note, but they touch it, and then the Reaper associated with that Death Note is now visible. This is how L saw the Reaper, and nearly had an apoplectic fit because duh. But the nature of the Death Note stays unanswered. I have exactly the same questions here. Does your basic personality change when you use the Death Note? We don't know. What does the Death Note do in terms of souls? Because Oriental, the Zen Buddhism doesn't talk about souls, but we in the West, we talk about souls. And this is what happens to, in a Western sense, to Light at the end, is his soul is destroyed. That which would in Zen Buddhism would reincarnate, that part of him is destroyed.
But was it destroyed at the end when he dies, or was it destroyed when he picked up the Death Note?
Well, that is a Zen Buddhist.
Or was he even born with a soul?
Well, that is.
We don't know that.
We don't know that, but that's those are Zen Buddhist questions. But a Western question would be, because touching, actually, just touching or being associated with this Death Note does change people. The entire in the end, the entire task force ends up touching it, and everybody sees Ryuk. How does it change you? What does it do in terms of souls? They never answer that because we don't know. What the basic nature of Death Notes are and how it works, we don't know. It stays unanswered. What we get at the end is a very pretty corpse. One of the weirder things about the Death Note is that it's actually written, the rules in this Japanese anime, the rules in the Death Note are written in English and then are subtitled in Japanese. That's a little bit problematic because of course the Japanese translation is going to be perfect because that was the original, but the English ones are not quite as perfect. So you got English on the screen in
the anime, then there is going to be Japanese subtitling to that, and there's English subtitling to that. All right, okay.
Well, the subtitling goes with the original English, which is, like I said, it's the problem because that is not what the Japanese people are reading. Yeah. So any mistake in original written thing, it's there is a couple of scenes of international stuff where you actually have non-Japanese people doing Japanese things, and of course the FBI agent that trails him is not non-Japanese, but his Japanese, of course, is perfect, and it's okay. I understand it's an anime.
What about the Interpol people? Are they European? Or?
The Interpol people, so that's the FBI agent and his fiancée. His fiancée is actually Japanese, but he is not Japanese. But his Japanese is perfect.
Okay, fair enough. It can happen.
Actually, no, it can't, because there was actually a person interspersed who complicated, but that was far-fetched to have that person speak perfect Japanese. I understand, but I have a closing thing, but I do believe Peanut Gallery has questions.
Yes, I have several questions. So, back to the Buddhism. What little I know of it anyway. So, Light loses his way, effectively. Pretty much at the get-go, because he decides he circumvents the law, because he thinks he's doing the right thing, because he can. So he's taking the law into his own hands, and after that he never stops doing that. Fine. Okay.
The takes his law in his own hands doesn't even, it's not even an issue.
It's not even in his...
No, it's not even a talking point or a thinking point or anything like that.
So that was really one of the questions I have, is like law. Like literally not just L hunting him, the FBI hunting him, but literally the fact that he is completely... just law does not mean anything to him.
No, the only person who makes any indication of that it is important is the dad, but only because having a murderer run around is a nuisance.
It's inconvenient.
It's untidy. It's
Yes.
more of untidiness.
Yes.
Elle, I do think that if Elle had had more time to get over the fact that it was a supernatural phenomena that he was dealing with, might have been able to come to some sort of moral judgment on it, but it went so fast he had no chance. Which is actually a shame, because I think that would have been interesting to see what would Elle do with the Death Note.
Yeah.
But he doesn't get to be in that position.
If Elle would have had the opportunity to use the Death Note, he might have gone off the deep end as well. Is it the singer or the song, right?
Yeah.
Is it the Death Note itself, or is it the person that is doing something with the Death Note?
This anime does not answer the question.
No.
Doesn't mean that this question doesn't get answered at some point, but this anime doesn't do it.
But does it even pose the question?
No.
It doesn't.
No.
It just is. So that's where I get my yin and my yang again, because you're basically looking at this side of the spectrum. This is what can happen if somebody can be judged during an
She's pointing that way.
Yeah, I'm pointing that way. That side of the spectrum.
Pointing that way.
It can, and then yin and yang, of course, have a footprint in the other realm as well. So are they two halves of the same coin, or are they truly opposites? Or doesn't it even matter, because there is no judgment and morality at all about this?
There is no value judgment in this thing at all. The only person who has any sort of value judgment is the dad and Light, because psychopathy, if you're a psychopath, it means you don't care about anything other than yourself. There are one exception: they do have some loyalty to family, and he has some loyalty towards his dad, not endlessly, and the way that dad views him is important to Light, but not important enough to change his ways. It is important enough to not burden his dad before the guy dies, because this is a horror story. Everybody dies. So, no value judgment for anything, ever, except that dad's opinion is the only one who makes any sort of judgment. And the dad doesn't like it.
Okay. Meta question. Could the Death Note be an analogy for a samurai sword? And with a samurai sword, I mean the type of sword that is so lethal that when you draw it, somebody will die.
Yep.
Because used in anger, you slice a person in half, really.
Yep.
So this weapon is binary, and the Death Note book seems to be binary. It's like you either use it or you don't.
Yeah.
And when you use it, it is absolute. So this Death Note is an absolute weapon.
Yeah, it can only end with a killing. Yes.
And so if it's an absolute weapon with only ever one outcome, and you either decide to use it or you don't, then you have absolute power corrupts absolutely. So the moment he picked up, now back to the beginning, he picks up the book, he is corrupted. Yeah?
Absolute power corrects absolutely.
Yeah, so got to the same point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yes, and that's why it's actually the dad versus Light is interesting, because I still think that dad is what Light would have been if he had not had been given a Death Note and he had gone on with his life.
That time.
Because
he doesn't get any time, because he's
just like Elle, he gets no time
he's
either.
Either a high school student or he's a university student, but he has basically not had time to become a person, and this just sweeps him away.
Yeah.
And he's not even enough of a person to be bothered about it, because he's like, that's it. So he's not going to
Misa gets more personality before they get the Death Note than he does. He is an empty vessel. That's it, because Misa actually had the background of her family being murdered, and that gives you something. It's not just nothing. And the family that Light comes from is a box standard 2006, 2006 Japanese middle class family of police commissioner, not quite as high as commissioner, just above detective. I have to look up what that is.
Lieutenant?
Probably lieutenant, yeah. So he's a police lieutenant. His mom is a stay-at-home mom. He has a nice sister who comes to Light to help him with his homework. Everybody's nice. They gave him space. They gave him all the space and food he needs to do what he needs to do, which is pass exams. Mm-hmm. That's what he needs to do in life. And I think in 2006 there were a lot of 17-year-olds that were doing that. Things has changed now a little bit, but at that time that is what you did when you were 17. You were trying to get into college. You eat and breathe exams. It's so middle class. There's nothing there. There's no trauma. There's no history. It is so normal. And yet he is a psychopath, and yet the Death Note falls in his hand and he starts murdering.
But if he had not had that happen to him, and he would have just been dropped into the university that he managed to get into, and they would have given him a law degree or a law education, he would have he would have just gone on and said, "Oh, here are law books. I will just apply."
Yeah, he was going. Actually, I'm not even sure that they actually mention what kind of university he does. He does get in because time does go on. Yeah. He gets in and he does really well. He becomes Japanese version of valedictorian and all that kind of thing. But I don't even think they even mention what he studies, because I think he's going to just study law and become a policeman. That's how he slots into the investigation, because he is the son of a police commissioner, and he's smart, and they need any living body at this point, because everybody's scared to death of Kira, because Kira can kill with just knowing your name and your face. So everybody has an alias on the task force. This is why L is so hard to catch for Light, because nobody knows his real name. And trying to figure that out takes so much effort. Do you have more questions?
Just is it actually written by the same person as the Hikaru no Go series?
No. The reason that it was recommended to me is because the artist is the same. The artist simply draws what is asked of him. It's beautiful art, by the way, which brings us actually back to the closing thing. One of the things that is visually in this thing is Ryuk, the demon, the demon, and what he does. He does very little. The only thing he does is drop the Death Note, and then sort of hangs around. Occasionally, you can't even send him for a message. I mean, in all of the whole thing, he does like two things, because Light asks him, and because he thinks it's omoshiroi, he thinks it's entertaining. And the only other thing he does is eat apples. He loves apples, and so he eats apples all the time. And in Western culture, apples have a very strong metaphor. It also turns out some in Eastern culture. In Western culture, knowledge and prosperity and all these things. In some Japanese things, that apples are also for prosperity. And so the fans wanted to know, why is Ryuk eating apples? And the actual writer of the Death Note is, you can't talk to him. This is not a talking to kind of guy. Mm-hmm. However, the artist was at a convention, and they asked him, and he said, well, because this is the bright red apples, like that one, like bright red apples, and he said, well, I liked the way it looked next to this sort of monochrome monster, this bright red apple. So that's the reason. But I think, accidentally, they made a wonderful metaphor here, because so apples represent prosperity and growth and knowledge, and Ryuk consumes them all. Light keeps buying apples for him. He never eats one himself. Everyone is consumed by Ryuk. And in the end, Ryuk consumes Light's soul. And there you have it.
Could it also be that it is Light's heart, and he's eating Light's heart over and over and over again? Light does not have his heart anymore the moment that he enters this story.
Yeah, that would work. Yeah. But it's coincidence. It happens to be a really nice color for I'll show a picture, because the Ryuk is a bit monochrome. He's very black and white. So this is how an accidental thing of oh, pretty red against black and white becomes something much stronger. Because oh my god, this was a ride. Really, I highly recommend watching it. I will warn you, you will be very uncomfortable, but that's the point. The point is that you will be uncomfortable watching this guy go off the deep end, because he's a psychopath. It is supposed to be uncomfortable, but it's a great ride. It's a beautiful anime. 2006 is not the newest. The progression in development of animes becomes more and more. It's not a flashy. It's very beautiful to watch. Artwork is beautiful. They take enough time. They have enough time, and they take enough time to do each part right. And it's so tension filled. Oh my god! Yes, go watch. Yep, highly recommend. And that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. Of course, if an anime is successful, you
make a live action.
You make a live action version, yes. So the Japanese made a live action version of Death Note. They actually made more than one. But we're starting with the 2006. These are probably TV specials. They appear to be 3 movies, but they're not. They are part 1 and 2, and the third 2 years later. So 1 and 2 is what we're going to talk about. I'm going to assume that you either seen Death Note or you've seen my talk about the Death Note, because there's a lot. There is a lot. But if you know the story from having seen it, then you should be fine for this talk. The biggest problem this thing had was that it's only they're trying to do the story in 2-hour movies, so about 4 hours, and the story is 17 hours long. So they realized quickly they need to cut stuff really badly. But the story actually breaks down in about 5 segments, very clearly. And they decided we're going to do the 3. And then the 5th one, which is the end bit, we're going to stick it on to the 3rd one. Because you have no choice. And I think that was a good choice. It works. They have to change some of the plots, but they did it in a way that is actually fitting to the story. I have no complaints with that. The original story is a fight to the death between L and Light, and that's still what it is. It just, because they had to end somewhere and quickly, it ends in a different way. Duh. one of the things I see with actions adaptation, Japanese live actions adaptations of an anime, is that they're suddenly confronted with the actual physicality of actual physical beings, whereas light in anime is a too pretty young 17-year-old with a complexion that a Japanese person just doesn't have, and L is the sort of a human goblin type with complexions and facial features that people just don't have. They have to conform to this. This also in combination with the fact that you also want really good actors to especially play a light, because it's a bloody difficult role. You're playing a psychopath. He's a psychopath. You did realize that, right? Yeah, we did realize that. You're watching a psychopath go off the deep end for 4 hours and trying to react to that. You need a really good actor, and get a 17-year-old. Two things: one, get a 17-year-old actor who can do that. Yeah, no. Two, watching a 17-year-old commit murders like that. Yeah, no. So, and they had a really good actor. I'm gonna put him on screen, and I'm not gonna try and pronounce his name because I also didn't write it down. So, he's perfect. He is really he hits that psychopathy note so well. You believe it. And the actor who plays L is also perfect, because he gets that he needs to be a little bit overdone. I mean, yes, he's trying to put a realistic person in reality, but everybody's seen this anime. This anime is so famous. Everybody's seen it. So he makes sure that he does as much of L as he can without making himself look like a clown. He skirts that line very, very clearly, and he does it really well. And of course, the dad, which is the dad, needs to be a sturdy guy that you can see. Yeah, he's a police lieutenant. Yeah, he is Japanese descendant from millennia of samurai and all that kind of thing. And you see all that in this guy. This is a sturdy guy. His son is also sturdy. They're pretty sturdy people. I like that. They have to go for the bare bones of the story. They pare it down as much as they can without losing the niceness. The only thing they did was extend on the Misa story, on the girl. They give her the backstory that she needed in the original anime, because they skip it. They just plonk her down with the death note and say two things, and then that's it. They give her that backstory. Thank you. I mean, it's all of 2 minutes work, and they actually realized, yes, it needs it. Let's do it. This is highly recommended. That's all I have to say. Yeah, sometimes this stuff is good. It's just good. Just go do it. You don't have to see the original to really enjoy this one. It was good. Okay. 2 years later, once this came out, and I think, like I said, I think it was like a TV special, like two weeks in a row or something like that. I've seen other things be specials like that, or maybe I don't think it ever came to the cinema. It's not that kind of movie. It's also just simply part one goes on, stops in the middle of at the cliffhanger, and then goes to part two. So there's no, just watch them both together. Part 3, which is called L Change the World, and I'm going to put a spoiler warning here because it spoils the end of the other two, of course, because they have to go a different way. In the struggle between L and Light, in the original anime, L loses. Light loses in the end anyway, because duh. But in this one, they don't have time for that. They have the struggle, and L wins, ish. He wins because there were two Death Notes at some point, and there's a rule, because the rules of the Death Notes are long and many, many pages. One of the rules says that if your name has been written in one Death Note and then is written in another Death Note, the one in the first Death Note counts. The other one is invalid. So, what does this L do? He writes his name in one of the Death Notes, and he writes it himself in one of the Death Notes. And so when Light writes down his name and figures it out and writes down his name, he can't. It's already...
Why didn't he die from having his name in the Death Note?
He does die from it.
Oh.
He is on a time crunch, because the longest time you can let somebody live while their name is in a Death Note is 23 days. So he has 23 days. And that is what this movie is about.
So he's...
If you are... The premise of the L Changed the World is you have 23 days. You are... What are you going to do? You have 23 days left in the world. What are you going to do? And because he is a detective, first thing he does is solve every single unsolved case that he can. He just goes for page and page and file. Oh, go look at that. Oh, go look at that. Because who cares about reputation? You're not going to take my advice yet. Up to you. I'm going to die. I don't care. And another thing he does, because he's actually left at the end of the original of the film adventure, he's left with 2 Death Notes. So the question, what does L do if he holds a Death Note? And we find out the answer. He does what any sane people would do. He puts he has them burned in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Duh.
Yes, I would definitely. I would at least try to burn them.
Yeah, that's my question. My original question of the story is that if this would happen to me in morality tale would happen to me, and I'm given a Death Note, what would I do with it? I would try to destroy it. Question is, of course, if it is like a hell property, could you destroy it? Yeah. And that's that they don't make that problem. He gets to destroy it, and he gets to have a nice adventure after. It's fanfic. This film is straight up fanfic. Enjoyable fanfic. Oh my god! And because the actor who plays L is so yummy, not sexy yummy, but just fun to watch. This awkward little goblin guy trying to have a fun adventure. I mean, it's Action L, and Action L is not very action-like, but suddenly we have Action L running around. It's fanfic. It's great. So for that, highly recommend it as sort of a little dessert on the other 2 movies, because it is a very heavy story and. And of course it ends the only way it can, because
everybody dead.
Death Note is a horror story. The difference for L is that he can actually pass on a legacy, whereas Light has nothing. Light has no legacy, but L has a legacy, and that they realize that, and they do that here. He has one in the original because he passes on his detectiveness to M and to Melo and Nier, M and L, and he does so the same in here. He finds Nier and passes it on. Wonderful, like it. Go watch. Then in 2016, so 10 years after the film came out and 8 years after the fanfic film came out, from the same makers, which is interesting, they said, we're going to have another go. They did a series of little shorts of people, like 20 minutes each, 4 little shorts of people receiving a Death Note, and what are you going to do with it, or people around that. And then they made a movie to put that all together, and it's called Light Up the New World. And it answers, or the premise is, so if you don't do light and you don't do L, because why not? But you do the Death Note story. What happens if you gave the Death Note to somebody else? What would they do with it? Of course, one of the things that they do that happens if you have like criminals that make dead people, and now the idea of Kira, of the phantom killer who just kills by letting people keel over with a heart attack for no reason, is now known. So they know what the nature of Kira is. They know there's a Death Note behind it. So they have a Death Note task force. And the Death Note task force has a detective. And he's actually also called L, because tradition. But he's a different L. He's absolutely not our L. He's not a descendant. He's just another one of the alphabets. And he has an adventure. And he does these sets of movies make more of a morality choices than the original anime does. The anime makes no choices at all. It doesn't indicate this is good or bad or anything. Here it does. In the original, in the movies, the first two movies ends badly for Light, with the full clear condemnation of Light. They realize this is the bad guy, yeah, and they present him as such. Not at the beginning, because you do find this out, and while he doesn't really find it out, we as the viewers are led to find this out, yes. And in the end, there's a confrontation with Elle and Dad and Light, of course, in which they have it out. What is right and what is not right, and this is not what Light is doing is not right. So they make, and I think it's because this is not an anime, so these are not little drawn figures, but actual people. They have to start. They realize they have to concretify not only the physicality of the people, but also the choices they make. Suddenly, a pretty corpse is not an option anymore. They don't present a pretty corpse at the end, as in the anime. It ends up with a pretty corpse of Light. Here, it doesn't. There is no. Oh, isn't this a pretty corpse kind of moment?
So there's no glorifying of all this killing.
No, it is very much a movie of especially the 2006 movies of Light's journey downhill, but he's less aware of it. He's also like in the anime, he's not scared of Ryuk, which I think is an important point. But he is not. I think he's less aware of it, that he's really, really doing the wrong thing. But the everybody else around it, especially Dad, is very much aware that this is very bad. The 2016 movie of the different L and then different is more of a whodunit. This is more of a detective story with a horror tint than it is an actual thriller. Like the original is actually this fight between L and Light is what brings it, and that is less so in the 2016 version. So still worth seeing. The 2016 it is okay. It's okay. I enjoyed it. So that's no. Oh no.
Not there yet.
Oh no, because they couldn't leave it alone. Another company. I think must be another company, completely unrelated production, because these 2006 and 2008 and 2016 are related. In fact, to the 2016, they actually had a cameo of the 2006 people in it, so that was nice. So this is the same universe. This next one is not the same universe. They did a TV series, 2015 Japanese TV series of the anime. And this time they have 11 episodes, which is about 8 hours. And yes, they're doing the entire 5 acts of the story. That's about the only good thing I can say about it. There's one other good thing I can say about it, is that the actor who plays Light, and the one who plays L, and the one who plays Dad, they are wonderful. And for that, it's worth seeing. However, they mess up the story, not in a factual way, but in a mood way. They don't realize, in some way, I'm not sure what if they don't realize it is because, because they feel too uncomfortable with it, they don't realize that the bad guy is Light. They try to humanify him. They try to justify what he does. They try to make him sympathetic. They try to make him love Misa, and he just didn't. And he's also younger again. He's now back to being 17. They have this actor they have for it. He's really, 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 really good. And that makes it, because the choices they made in the script is bad. Oh, they misunderstood this. The point is that it's uncomfortable to watch him run his life into the ground. Yeah. His life and everybody else's life. Anybody who touches, he runs it into the ground. And it's comfortable to watch. This is not a fun little romp or something.
And then somebody said, wouldn't it be nice if we make him the hero?
Yeah, make him the hero.
Or at least an anti-hero. No, not an anti-hero. Reluctant bad guy.
No, not even that, because he could have thrown away. If he was anywhere close to any sort of sensible good guy, he would have just thrown away the Death Note or destroyed it. Yep. He uses it. The fact that he uses it is
There is another option that has not come up.
There's more than one, but yeah.
Right, okay, I'm sure there's many options that he could have done. Which is, he could have taken the Death Note, he could have put his own name in it, and he could have just self-destructed. He said, this is too dangerous, like somebody handing you a bomb that can blow up the city and you have no way of dismantling it. Well, you make sure you get the hell out of the city, and if that means you get blown up with it, tough cookies, but need of the many and all of that. He could have done that. He could have done that the moment he knew what this power was.
The reason he would have had to do a little bit more than that if he wanted to actually, because he would have to put something like Light finds a way to completely destroy the Death Note after he would. The thing is, only if it's physically possible. If he kills himself by using the Death Note, and actually that's sort of what happens in the 2016 movie, roughly, the Death Note is still there, and it's still going to fall.
Somebody can find it, yeah.
So this is actually the problem in the 2016 one, because 6 Death Notes are in circulation, and yeah. Oh my god. This 2015 series, the problem is that they didn't quite understand what the premise was. They didn't quite understand what their genre is, because it's basically a clear detective story with horror elements. That's what it is. And therefore needs to be fit together like this, like a zipper fits up. If you do that wrong, you get a mess. This is what we get. They don't understand that requires that the characters have to be a certain type, that Light needs to be that psychopath, or it doesn't work. L needs to be this focused on doing what he's doing, or it doesn't work. Dad needs to do the part that Dad does, and Misa needs to do what her part does. There is some wiggle room there, but not much. Or it doesn't work and it becomes a sort of a Death Note shaped object. So even though it's well acted, well produced, it has a couple of good moments, the acting being definitely one of the best. I don't recommend this one. Watch it if and when you've seen the original, and then you can sort of watch it as, this is a could have been kind of situation. The acting is really, really nice. I like the Misa, the actress. Like all the actors are really good. The Misa one is, I think, one of my favorites. The other one's also good. There's nothing wrong with the other one. It's just the role is terrible. Peanut Gallery has something.
Yes. So you said it's a police detective horror?
It's police with horror elements.
Horror elements. So is that true, or is it actually a thriller? Because it's a horror when they have the 6 death notes after L is dead, and you don't know who's going to pick them up. That's a horror story. But if he manages to get rid of the death notes, he sacrifices himself with it, then it's a thriller. Because he managed to get the evil away.
Yeah, but then that never happens. There's no version of that where he actually uses the death note to get rid of the death note. You can't. That's where the horror element comes in.
But he burned them, you said.
In the other one, in L Change the World, L burns them, but he still dies because
he dies. But that's the thriller element.
That's the thriller.
He has to sacrifice himself.
Yeah, okay. The problem is that Ryuk and his world are not going to go away, and that's why it's in the same world that 10 years later 6 death notes are dropped. That's the same world that L got the death notes written.
Then it's horror again. It's like you, no matter what you do, you
will
lose. Not win.
Yes, exactly. That's why it's a horror. That's why the horror elements comes, and that's why Light also uses, regardless of the fact if you think he is the hero or not, he loses. L loses. Dad loses. Misa loses. She not going to explain that, but she also loses. She survives, but she loses. Everybody loses. So,
well, I figure anybody who's touched the thing and used it has already lost.
Yeah,
can never. Will also not go to heaven and hell.
Yes, and that's
or hell. It's just you disappear. That's it. End of life.
Exactly.
End of existence.
Exactly. So that's where that comes in. Japanese versions.
Live action, you mean?
Live action Japanese versions. And next up will be the American version in the next one. Because this was my opinion. And I'm sticking to it. In 2017... The peanut gallery already got rolling on the floor. Great start. In 2017, Netflix decided they wanted in on the action and they wanted to make their own version of the Death Note. Death Note is, of course, an anime from 2006, from a manga from a little earlier, about the Death Note. So it's a story of a young man who finds a book in which you can write names and these people will suddenly keel over dead. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Oh.
I mean, if you tell people the plot of Highlander, and you go, this is about people who live forever, and then they do that by chopping people's heads off, I am still surprised that they managed to get that into series in the early 90s.
It's true, but they actually worked at it. These people, a little bit less so. What makes the Death Note story interesting, the Death Note and Light, because Light story, is that Light takes up this Death Note and starts killing like there's no tomorrow, and happily to do so, clearing the world of criminals left, right, and center. No problem.
So he has the moral high ground.
He certainly thinks so. And another thing that is very specific about the Death Note, it is very specifically Japanese, with a Japanese reason for being. Let me put it this way. If you want to know more about that, we had a discussion about it in the one about the actual story, about why elements happen in this story. And if you're going to make a Western version of that, you need to think about this. What they did here was a Death Note shaped object, basically. They put in a light. Oh, they realized, well, he's Japanese. No, it's going to be in Seattle. So we call him Light, but we give him a different last name. I didn't even bother writing it down. So his father was a policeman, so we do that. So he has a mother and a sister. Oh, that's inconvenient. Let's just X that. So he has to be in high school, American high school. Oh yeah, American high school kid, Japanese high school kid, all the same. So Misa. Oh yeah, maybe she's a cheerleader. Oh yeah, let's do that. And then we give him a deadly weapon to have fun with Misa. They call her Mia because Misa is not a. I understand that Misa is not a girl's name in America.
Seattle.
In Seattle. So calling her Mia is fine. But they changed her personality. They changed Light's personality. They don't have a choice, because if you're gonna go for he's just a regular kid, and Mia is just a regular kid, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, okay. So they didn't actually make it Japanese in Seattle. They made it like locals. Whatever is defined as local to Seattle. There could be Japanese people in Seattle. There's no reason why they couldn't be there.
But that's not
what they did.
That's not what they did.
All right.
Oh no! Did you thought that might be an option? No, there was not even a talk of that.
Right.
No. Light is just a regular Seattlean kid, and Mia is a Seattlean kid, a cheerleader. The thing about the Death Note story is it is a very tightly written story that fits together like a zipper. And if you mess with any part of it, it's... And that's exactly what it does. This is... They have a wonderful actor to play L. He's actually black, which was an interesting choice. I like him a lot, but he gets no chance. Light Turner, his name is Turner. He's okay. Dad's okay. But they simply misunderstood the entire premise. It's so far out of that looks like L. Yeah, he not in his L makeup, by the way. That he has a different makeup.
I'm just baffled that because Netflix has really put themselves forward as to want to do globally interesting stories that are from locals that are other.
This is too early. This is 2017. It's 5 years ago.
Oh, it's so 5 years ago.
It's all 5 years ago.
Yeah,
the Netflix has learned from this mistake. Everybody was upset about it because they basically simply did not understand any of it. Just missed any of it. And I have a list, but it's completely useless to go through it. Let's pick some things that were good for the Seattle version. This is fully the first time you see a really scary Ryuk. Ryuk, scary as F. And Light is actually scared of him, which is... But the point of the original story is that Light wasn't scared of this creep, of this monster. and he realized what it was. The fundamental. This Light is so dumb. He's just so a regular kid, and the Death Note with a regular kid, it doesn't work, because he would.
There's a plot point in the original that both L and Light were, brilliant.
Yeah.
Maybe not genius level, but they were brilliant.
Yeah, they were genius level.
So they were genius level. So they're. Otherwise, things would have probably imploded much faster.
He would have been caught much faster. There would have been a. The Death Note literally wouldn't have been dropped in front of Light, because I do feel, even though it doesn't look like that, I feel Ryuk picked Light specifically and dropped it roughly so where Light would find it, and maybe enchanted it so that only Light would see it, and that's what Ryuk does. And when in the original story Ryuk holds the Death Note to take onto somebody else, he finds somebody and does. They can find them. And that's why Light gets a Death Note, because he is that kind of personality. A regular kid would not be getting a Death Note. It's just not. And what do they do with it? So, I have a list of, because this film is so bad, I'm not even to talk about it. And this is not a production issue, this is not an actor issue, it's just plain a story choice issue. What are we going to write the story about? How are we going to write it? And they're messed up in the script, and the rest is fine. But there is a could have done a section and a should have done section. And what they actually, it's a should have done or should have done. There are two possible things they could have done. So there's a could have done, two possible could have done sections. One, they could have done what they did in the 2006 Japanese live action, is realize you have a finite amount of time, take the best parts of it. Basically what they should have done with this could have done is go to that other film, sit down with a pen, and simply write down what they did, and just write your script accordingly, because they did everything right. If you're on a time crunch, if you have to make hard choices, what are we going to keep? What are you going to put in? It's all in that one. It's between the two movies. It's 4 hours. You can condense that down in 2 hours for Netflix TV. It's not going to be easy, but you can do it. Yeah, that's one of the could have dones. The other could have done is take the idea of a Death Note and do what my original thought with the Death Note was. When I very first time I watched it, I realized very quickly, this is a morality tale. What do you do if you received a Death Note? What would you do? And they could have done that, and then just not get in a Light. Don't call him Light. Don't call her Misa. Don't put in a dad like that. Get other people. Just your regular Jack, Seattle Jack, with who has a life, and he receives a Death Note. And then what happens next? Write that story.
Then it would have slotted into the expanded universe of all these animes and films. Well, the films at any rate. It could be the expanded universe of the films that were already available in Japan. And then create an extra story.
What in the 2016 story film where they have multiple Death Notes drop? Yes, one could have been dropped in Seattle.
Yeah, that's like Star Trek: The Next Generation, rather than do a reboot of TOS.
Yeah, but if my point is that you either do a straight up exactly what it says on the tin of the original, and then use your 2006, the people who already did the work to cut it down to the bare minimum, do that exactly, and do Light exactly like that. The full psychopathic Light, the way he is, and yes, it's uncomfortable to watch, but that's the point of this show. Or you do Seattle Kid meets Death Note.
I'm surprised that after Hannibal that they pull any punches. I mean, you got Dexter, you got Hannibal. It's already been on television, and Dexter is old.
Yeah.
At this point, this is like 15 years old. Hannibal is 10 years old.
I've looked it up. Dexter is actually
You got Dexter on your list there?
Yeah, I have it on my original list because here, Dexter 2006 to 2013, Breaking Bad 2008 to 2013.
Yeah, and then there's Hannibal.
Didn't put Hannibal on there, but
it's about in the late teens or something, or the middle teens.
Yeah. It had more of a Dexter vibe to me because Dexter tries to do good by murdering, roughly. I haven't actually seen it.
You have the psychopath vibe.
Yeah, but he murders. But Light does this. Light does the same thing. Tries to do the same thing. He tries to do. That's his excuse. His excuse is to. But if you do not accept that Light is the bad guy of your story, then don't do the Light story, because then you do not understand it. If you try to make Light a normal kid or doesn't work, it's wrong. Please do something else. Do Seattle Jack meets Death Note, and Seattle Jack could be the son of a policeman suddenly holding a Death Note. Dad, I have this thing. It works. What do we do now? Then also answered all the questions that we had in the Japanese version of what does the morality of this Death Note, what is the nature of the Death Note, what is the nature of the Death Note in the Western world, in Seattle Death Note. You're talking about, now we're talking about souls, actual Western idea of what a soul is like and how is it destroyed and what is the nature of Ryuk. He is a demon. He always came across to me as a straight up, by the book demon. A force of evil that doesn't actively do stuff, but it corrupts everything that's around it. That's what Ryuk does. And that is what you can use in your version to make it an interesting story. And it should be an amazingly good story if you either do the Morality Tale Western version of Death Note Morality Tale, or you do Light's psychopathic Light story.
Effectively got an Anakin Skywalker conundrum, because the middle movie, the prequel movies, Star Wars. Sorry for diverging, but you're talking about somebody being corrupted by a power that is coming from the outside, and finally giving in to that power. Whereas this is the story they could have told. If you say this is a young man, Boy Next Door is like the most basic of tropes in Western storytelling is the boy next door and turns out to be the great grand hero. Fantastic. Now you got Anakin Skywalker, who is not quite the boy next door, but he's all this blonde and all this lovely and all this pretty, and then still gets corrupted, which is one of the more interesting things about the prequels.
And you could have done something like that with the Death Note, and then maybe not answer the question, but ask the question, what is the nature of the Death Note? Would he have been corrupted if he had not had the Death Note? Or maybe there's so many.
Even get, because Western storytelling is about the struggle between good and evil.
Yeah, but you get a choice.
You get a choice.
You get a choice.
And the thing is,
he gets a choice.
He does get a choice.
I mean, no, he should in this story. If we write Seattle Jack meets Death Note, then he should get a choice of knowingly going into the Death Note, and then if he doesn't, so you have two choices. He can either do it, and then you can do a whole. Then he turns into the bad guy, and you have to do that story, or you can go the other way and say, what are we going to do, and do the Frodo option. What are we going to do to get rid of this evil? And what is the nature of this evil? Because they have to figure out what is the nature of this evil and how to combat it. There is no solutions to this one, because the anime doesn't tell you the nature of the Death Note or how to get rid of it. You do the Frodo option. You start. He talks to Dad, and they try to figure out how to destroy the damn thing.
Where is Mount Doom? Where can we find Mount Doom?
Is Mount Doom the thing we need, and how should we go to that? And you have that story. So you have lots of stories you can write, and that's one of the things I think why this entire story, Death Note story, is a new story. There are so many stories you can write about this. So many options that can still happen that the only very few have done. And this movie completely misses the point altogether because it didn't do any of it. It just did something.
So what happens to Light? In
Does-
the story?
Does it matter?
I guess not, but like...
This Light survives and he and Dad survives and yeah, like I said, it doesn't matter.
There are no stakes because
There's no stakes.
Frodo did not survive.
Yeah.
Bilbo almost didn't survive. He survived
No,
until
he
the
didn't
end,
survive,
but
yeah. He was destroyed.
Blemished by it for the rest of his life, although he got to live it out. But fortunately, there is such a thing as the Elven Heaven, or wherever they go to, the land in the west.
The Western lands, yes.
But Frodo had to lay down his life for getting rid of the Death Note.
There's no consequences in this. There is the only power struggle is actually between Light and Mia, because she's not quite as big as a pushover as she is in the original.
Hallelujah.
And that ends badly for one of them. But the actual mechanics, what made the anime so good is that the actual mechanics of how to get the Death Note to do what you need it to do at the right moment and how does it work, they don't get any of it. The Death Note has a list of rules about yay or long, and there are reasons for every single rule. One of the rules is, yes, you can put in a death, but you cannot have third-party deaths attached to it. So you can't say, okay, somebody is going to die in a train accident on the way home from work, because either miraculously only one person dies in the train accident or it doesn't happen, because it cannot have a third-party fatality.
So you can't have one person targeted in a flying airplane to crash.
And you also can't say, I will send this person to kill that person, and then they kill over dead. So you can't do an assassination attempt of a third person.
That's handy.
And of course, all of that is gone because that's when they have the WFT on here, because the rules, the fuck, they are out of here. The rules, they didn't understand why these rules exist. And every rule in there, there is actually a mistake in the original manga, which the anime corrects, because something happens really early, and the mangas are written on the go and then published, and then there's written more. So this could not be corrected. You couldn't go back and correct it, but the anime could, because it was a little bit later when the story was already over, so they could correct it. And it was a motivational thing. They made a mistake with the motivation and they fixed it later. They realized it. This thing doesn't realize there are such things like mistakes that you can make. Let's just make them left, right, and center, and whole. Seriously.
Yeah, I have questions.
I see a hand
Peanut
up at
gallery
the
here.
peanut gallery has her peanuts out.
Holding up some peanuts. Flicking peanuts to the...
Thank you.
So, what I'm hearing is that they failed to transcribe the premise. Because if you take something that is so alien to the culture that whoever Netflix is in Seattle, I don't know who they are. Let's assume they're a bunch of Americans. It's, I don't know.
I've heard
But
that Seattle
let's say-
is in the States.
And it's Netflix, possibly an American company. I've never looked it up. So you take a premise, you don't have to take the story, but okay, you take the story, the characters, and the premise, and you transcribe it to a completely different part of the world for an audience in that part of the world. And it sounds to me that they completely missed the transcribing bit. Because if you don't get the same, you can make a different story, or you can make the same premise, but they change the details. I've seen many adaptations from one culture to another culture, and they wanted to make a movie or something like that.
They make two mistakes in translation. One, they make the actual mistake in translation of not of going from Japan to America, but they also change Light from a psychopath to a regular kid. And that's even worse than because they apart from some details, you can actually take the Japanese story and plonk it if you stick to Light is a psychopath and L is brilliant and also very
and you have a death demon.
And you have a death demon. But the demon is the least of your problems, because that demon fits in really well, surprisingly
With
well
North
in Western culture. We do know what demons are.
All sorts of supernatural creatures.
And the only discussion should have been, when would Seattle Jack know the consequences of, or Seattle Light, suppose a Seattle version of Light. When would Seattle Light know of the consequences of using the Death Note? Because that's a problem in the original. To Western sensibilities, he doesn't know it at the right moment. If you do that right, and you just do straight up the story, it's where Light is knowingly chooses to use the Death Note for the greater good and try and rid Seattle of crime life, just the same as the original Tokyo Light did in Tokyo. That would have worked, and you get the same problem, because this L and the international world and L is going to have the same problem with this Light, because you cannot have that in the world, not in Seattle and not in Tokyo.
And that's one of the things that
and that would have been the same too.
That I get angry over is that there's this pretense that people from another culture aren't people. Yes, you're looking at literally the other side of the world, but people are still people. Humans are humans.
Psychopaths are the same everywhere.
Boys and psychopaths are psychopaths. And there is not as much that separates us, but the culture we live in, the language we speak, and the visuals that we present ourselves in. And this boy was already blonde, but he's a blonde Japanese guy. So put a blonde Japanese guy in, for Japanese heritage, in Seattle.
You can, but it doesn't need it. It doesn't even need it, because
I know it doesn't need it, but it's like those basic things could have been done, and they didn't even do that.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly.
Why does it have to be a white guy? Because
that's. There's so much wrong with this.
You don't even bother with that.
Here, messed up, shoddy, WTF. Down the drain here. I have. Oh, too much money for special effects and
That's basically your death knell anyway. So my other question is, who do they think the audience is for this?
I have no idea.
Who did Netflix make it for?
My question is, did they think anything at all? Did they use their brain at all? I don't think so. It's not that hard to take something as brilliant but brilliantly simple as Death Note and stick it in Seattle. It shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't be this. You have to work at making it this bad. Really. Just do what it says on the tin. Just do that. These are archetypes, and it doesn't matter that they're in Japan.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't matter that they're in Japan. It doesn't matter what color they are. It doesn't even matter what gender they are.
So I guess it's not a recommended viewing.
It's. Can Can I go home now, please? Guys, do better. Do better. This story deserves better. This was garbage. 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 That is my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. Garbage.
Garbage. Ik ga hem uitzetten.